When you hear about how the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, treated women, what comes to mind? Maybe you've heard stereotypes or misunderstandings from the media, or even casual conversations. But the reality? It's a story of respect, honor, and revolutionary kindness, a treatment that was centuries ahead of its time. In 7th century Arabia, women often faced harsh treatment, but the Prophet Muhammad changed that narrative completely. He called women the twin halves of men. He said the best of men are those who are best to their wives. His first wife, Khadija radiallahu anha, was a successful businesswoman who supported him emotionally and financially. He always spoke of her with deep love and respect, even decades after her passing. The Prophet, peace be upon him, listened to women's opinion in community matters and consulted them regularly, unheard of in his time. The Prophet, peace be upon him, was known for his gentle manners, especially with women. There's a famous story of how he would help with household chores like mending his own clothes, planting in the garden, and tending to his family. When women complained about their husbands, the Prophet, peace be upon him, gave advice, emphasizing kindness, patience, and mutual respect. He never raised his voice to women, never dismissed their feelings, and always advocated for their dignity. Before Islam, women had almost no legal rights. They were considered property. The Prophet, peace be upon him, revolutionized this. He gave women the right to own property, inherit, choose their spouse, and receive education. He condemned female infanticide, which means the intentional killing of infants, a tragic practice at the time, as a grave sin. His teachings emphasized justice and equity, ensuring women's voices mattered in marriage, family, and society. So why does this matter? Because the Prophet, peace be upon him's example is a call for respect, dignity, and love. It challenges cultural practices that have no basis in Islam. For Muslim men and women, it's a reminder to live these values every day, to treat the women in our lives with the care and honor they deserve. And for non-Muslims, it's an invitation to see the true spirit of Islam, one of justice and compassion. Now, let's pause for a second, because to really understand how revolutionary the Prophet's treatment of women was, we need to take a step back and look at the global context. In ancient Greece, women were considered emotionally unstable and intellectually inferior. Aristotle, one of their most respected philosophers, called women deformed males. They weren't allowed to vote, own property, or speak in public forums. In Rome, women had no legal identity apart from their male guardian, father, brother, or husband. Even noble Roman women couldn't inherit freely or divorce easily, and domestic abuse wasn't just common, it was socially accepted. In India, practices like sati, where widows were expected to throw themselves into their husband's funeral fire, were seen as honorable. A woman's identity outside of marriage barely acknowledged. In Persia, elite women were cloistered and veiled, but the average woman had no say in family or political life. In that kind of world, the Prophet, peace be upon him, entered with a message that shocked the status quo. He didn't just say, treat women kindly. He legally, socially, emotionally, and spiritually elevated them. He made it clear, I do not allow the deeds of any doer among you to be lost, male or female. You are one of another. Surah Al-Imran. This wasn't just poetry. It was a law. It was creed. It was action. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, gave women the right to inherit, the right to choose marriage and divorce, the right to education and scholarship, the right to own and manage wealth, the right to raise their voice in public matters. Let's go deeper into how he practiced that. He stood up when his daughter Fatima radiallahu anha entered the room, a sign of immense respect. When Aisha radiallahu anha narrated hadith, companions would travel miles just to learn from her. She became a leading scholar, jurist, and public teacher. And Salama, the Prophet, peace be upon him, listened to her counsel during one of the hardest moments in his mission and took her advice. That moment changed the course of that event. In today's terms, the Prophet, peace be upon him, didn't just include women. He centered them, respected their intellect, and learned from them. But let's be honest, this wasn't always easy. The early Sahaba struggled too. Many men had to unlearn centuries of tribal patriarchy, and the Prophet, peace be upon him, was constantly reteaching them. The best of you are the best to their wives. Do not strike the female servants of Allah. Fear Allah in your treatment of women. This wasn't weakness. This was prophetic strength, reshaping society through justice and gentleness. So how did we get here? Where media images show oppressed, silent Muslim women behind black veils, while ignoring that Islam gave women more rights 1,400 years ago than many had in the West just 100 years ago. The answer: cultural baggage. Not Islam, not the Sunnah, but misinterpretation and misapplication of what the Prophet, peace be upon him, actually taught. Our role is to reclaim the legacy. The Prophet, peace be upon him, didn't just treat women well. He honored them, he protected their dignity, and he did it with intentionality, not passively. This legacy matters, not just for women, but for men too. Because how we treat women is part of our Iman. Sisters, your worth is not defined by society's trends. It's defined by the one who created you and the messenger who uplifted you. Brothers, following the Sunnah isn't just about beards or clothes. It's about embodying prophetic mercy in every interaction, especially with the women in your lives. Let's take one more moment to go beyond just the basics, to really appreciate the Prophet, peace be upon him's treatment of women. Philosophy strictly dictated a woman's place. Obey your father when you're young, your husband when you're married, and your son when you're old. Her role was obedience, silence, submission. In medieval Europe, women were legally minors. The church debated whether women even had souls. They were barred from education, forced into marriages, and couldn't inherit land in many regions. Even centuries later, during the Victorian era, a woman's property automatically became her husband's after marriage. In Japan, the samurai code, Bushido, emphasized male dominance. Women were respected in theory, but rarely allowed in public authority. Their grief, sacrifice, and silence were romanticized, and yet in the middle of the desert, in a tribal patriarchal society, the Prophet, peace be upon him, came with a message that flipped the system. It's not just about giving women legal rights. The Prophet, peace be upon him, made it ibadah, an act of worship, to treat women well. Not optional, not cultural, but deeply religious. Think about this hadith. Whoever has daughters and treats them well, they will be a shield for him from the hellfire. Can you imagine the weight of that? In a society where daughters were buried alive, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, raising them with care is your path to Jannah. He never once insulted women. He never mocked them, belittled their emotions, made them feel unworthy. And with Aisha radiallahu anha, he raised her, he joked with her, he consulted her, he defended her reputation with strength and grace. His treatment of women wasn't just kind, it was deeply personal, thoughtful, intentional. Islam didn't just let women exist, it allowed them to lead, teach, debate, and innovate. Aisha radiallahu anha narrated over 2,000 hadith. She was a scholar, a jurist, a political advisor. When companions had a disagreement in fiqh, they'd say, let's go ask Aisha. Salama helped advise the Prophet during the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. Her insight literally changed the course of that moment. These weren't exceptions, they were the norm in early Islam. So how did we lose that? How did the legacy of prophetic mercy turn into cultural silence, shame, and second-class status? The truth is, it wasn't Islam that failed women. It was culture. And in many cases, men choosing tradition over truth. Too many communities confuse cultural control with religious command. But if we want to revive the ummah, We have to go back to the Sunnah, not just in beard and clothes, but in character, justice, and how we treat women. And that starts at home. Brothers, how do you speak to your sisters, to your mother, to your wife, to your daughter? Do you raise your voice, belittle her dreams, or do you embody the Prophet's way? Share this video. Let's reintroduce the world and our own communities to the real Sunnah. The one where mercy wasn't weakness, it was the most powerful leadership the world had ever seen.